Let's now go to Lwando Nomoyi, standing by in Port Elizabeth to unpack the coming by-elections and the issues not just cropping up in Nelson Mandela Bay, but many other municipalities in the province. The by-elections may just be an indicator of how things may turn out next year at the polls. Lwando, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for coming through. What can you tell us about activities in your province leading up to Wednesday?
Ships are, but
not docking.
They're not docking.
Well, thank you very much, Desiree. It is edging closer and closer to by-election day on the 11th of November next week, where very highly contested wards in the Eastern Cape, 19 wards across 13 municipalities will be contested for. And, it is a tough task ahead for many of these political parties, including the small ones and the bigger ones. But in this particular metro as well, the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, we do understand that next month will mark an entire year without a mayor. We've been having an acting mayor since last year, December, and we do not even have a permanent, municipal manager. So there are various embezzlements and quagmires facing various municipalities in the Eastern Cape. But to unpack this and tell us more about the politics at play in the province, I've got with me political analyst Jolene Steenkotz. Thank you very much for your time, ma'am. Welcome to SABC News. Ma'am, we understand that the elections are not only, we don't have by-elections in the metro, but we do have them in other areas within the Eastern Cape. For instance, in embattled municipalities such as Amahlati, Buffalo City, all of them are, some of them are in crisis. What does this mean, for those particular municipalities?
I think when you start looking kind of at the dynamics of by-elections, there is a tendency to say, okay, we're going to use this as some sort of measuring stick to see how local government elections are going to proceed. And I would also argue and say that one has to be cautious, because traditionally with by-elections, voter turnout is always a lot lower than what you would have in a scheduled local government election. I do, however, think kind of looking at the by-elections and the dynamics that will characterize the by-elections will give us an indication of which political parties voters might be willing to go to the polls or not. And I think that is going to be the biggest struggle for political parties, is to get people to the polls, number one, and also then, of course, to cast a vote for them.
And another thing is also the issue of people downplaying, elections. Some of them don't understand, the power that by-elections have. And as you spoke about, the small voter turnout as well. We've seen the ANC across the country, deploying its candidates for these by-elections. What does this mean, really for these parties to actually partake in these by-elections?
Look, I think what we can find in terms of the dynamics of these by-elections is some political parties going out and saying, really canvassing, trying to say, we are here, we want your vote, we are being active on the ground, almost to lay a foundation for our local government elections for 2021. And you may find other political parties who say, look, listen, we are going to local government elections in 2021. I'm rather going to push my resources towards trying to gain more at the main event, so to speak, as opposed to by-elections. I think, if you kind of look at the ruling party and one looks at its performance, especially in the 2019 general election, the number of votes it has lost, the percentage of people who just simply opted out of the electoral process, which is just over half of the population. It is not surprising that the ruling party may be taking these by-elections seriously and kind of trying to rebuild some sort of political connection and political trust with communities.
And also coming back to the metro, we've got new players also who want seats in the council. For instance, Mr. Kustachek's new civil rights movement, in a highly contested metro. What is it that they have to do in order, to contest in this metro and convince people to vote for them?
I think that is where the big challenge lies, because we have seen previously, political parties that kind of paint themselves as movements or like broader social movements emerge. I'm thinking of Ahang, for example. A key thing, I would argue, if you look at kind of the political instability that has characterized not just Nelson Mandela Bay, but other municipalities in the country that are or were under coalition government, there needs to be a dialogue and a conversation prior to going to the polls. Who is going to work with whom? Which political and developmental agenda is going to be key to our electoral campaign? How are we going to structure our partnership that if it comes to a situation where there is a coalition, there is already a pre-agreed almost a contract, so to speak, that you can advance a developmental agenda and not have a council that turns into a political theatre that becomes so dysfunctional that it actually cannot render services to people.
Speaking also about the dysfunctionality, we've seen, how things have unraveled between the big parties, the ANC, the DA and the EFF in the metro. Now going to the local government elections next year, many of them are saying that they want an outright majority. Do we foresee this, or will we see another possible coalition?
It's a very difficult question to answer because my crystal ball might be broken. But I think kind of looking at the dynamics and also drawing back to the 2019 general elections, I wouldn't necessarily argue that we are seeing an increase in voter apathy. I think people are very, very aware of the power of the vote, but I do think we see a high level of disillusionment and almost a view that, well, I have voted, but my life has not necessarily gotten better. Political parties come and they make all of these promises. So I think it's going to depend quite a lot in terms of how political parties are able to motivate people to actually go out to the polls and cast a vote.
And also another burning issue, it wouldn't be only affecting the metro but many other municipalities in the country. It's the escalation in service delivery protests. How do they navigate through the space to ensure that they gain the confidence of the people again, so that they could deliver these services in their region?
That again also boils down to a question, I think, a lot around how political representation is structured. If you kind of look at the makeup of political participation in the country and in the municipalities, local governments need to consult and engage and take views of citizens into consideration. And very often what we see happening is your various imbizos, engagements, are almost a feedback kind of session, and communities feel that these formal structures of participation, their voices cannot be adequately heard in those structures. And in order to have their voices heard, there is then a need to say, okay, we're going to go out and we're going to protest, because once we protest, we get the attention of the political parties and they come to listen to our concerns. So I do think, again, after the 2021 local government elections, there really needs to be almost a shift in thinking about political participation, deliberation, and how people are represented.
And lastly, about the link between local government and provincial government. We've seen in Makhanda municipality, where the unemployed people's movement, they won in court that the municipality should be dissolved, and that the court ordered that provincial government should intervene. But the provincial government, also appealed this. Where does this leave people, on the ground floor, whereby service delivery is implicated between these embargoes?
I think if you start looking at the broader relationship, the relationship between national, provincial and local, and I think one of the key dynamics that does need to be addressed is that we kind of have to really separate the political and administrative interface. We need to move away almost from a sense where you have representatives who are then able to provide positions to other representatives almost as a reward for political loyalties. For me, there also needs to be a shift in that thinking to say we want to do the best for people. We want to really deliver on our constitutional mandate, and in order to do that, we really need to start separating out administrative and the political interface and say, okay, this is how we're going to work to advance development.
Right, thank you very much for your time, ma'am. That was political analyst Jolene Steenkotz, just unpacking to us, the politics at play in the province as elections are looming closer next week. So people will be going out in their numbers in 19 wards across 13 municipalities in the Eastern Cape to cast their votes in the by-elections. But from us here in Port Elizabeth, it's back to you in studio.